Welcome back to some more Elite Speak, and this is your AEW All Out pay-per-view review for September 5th, 2020, and it will include the buy-in matches as well. This pay-per-view was very up and down for AEW, had a lot of blunders, but the first half was kind of weak besides the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express match, but everything went up, improved, just as we hit the Thunder Rosa versus Shida match. From there on, everything was solid. So we're going to get into it right now. First, we're going to go to the buy-in, which featured Serpentico, whom has done a lot of work on Dark, who came out with Luther versus Joey Janela with Sunny Kiss. Janela just immediately gets to work on Serpentico to start. Then the match spills outside the ring. Janela then heads to the top rope and gets knocked off via Serpentico. Janela kicks Serpentico in the face, but Serpentico cracks his neck and delivers a flapjack to Janela for a 2 count. Janela tries to come back, but Serpentico puts a stop to it with corner attacks. Serpentico throws Janela outside the ring, and Luther attacks him while Serpentico distracted the referee. Serpentico then goes for his top rope foot stomp, but refuses to do it and instead stomps Janela because he wasn't going to give the fans what they wanted to see. Serpentico then goes for a senton, and Janela gets his knees up. Janela then comes back to life and hits Serpentico with a Blue Thunder Bomb for a 2 count. Janela later misses a moonsault, and Serpentico capitalizes and DDTs Janela for a 2 count. Janela later hits an Avalanche Fisherman Buster on Serpentico for a 2 count. Luther then grabs Janela's ankles, and Kiss comes to the rescue on the outside and wallops Luther. And Janela hits his patented elbow drop from the top rope for the win. Decent match on the buy-in. Next up we had Private Party versus the Dark Order, and this was the best buy-in match due to the Dark Order's performance. This match featured Dark Order members John Silver, and Alex Reynolds as the Dark Order. So Cassidy and Silver started the match and locked it up, and Cassidy gets out of it and headlocks Silver. Reynolds then gets involved, but Quinn helps Cassidy with a stereo drop kick to the Order. Quinn later steps up Hurricanrana's Ray Reynolds, then tags back in Cassidy for a flapjack Bulldog double 10 combo for a 2 count. Cassidy then gets beat down for most of the match. Quinn later gets the high tag and goes to town on both Silver and Reynolds. Quinn had a great moonsault during this sequence. Private Party goes for Silly String, but it gets scouted, and Quinn kicks out of Silver's finish after a nice sequence from the Dark Order. This woke everybody up to Silver's strength and his athleticism. Private Party, though, later wins with their gin and juice. Best match on the buy-in. Really showed off how good the Dark Order's Alex Reynolds and John Silver can be when given the time to work. Then All Out officially starts. We had the cinematic tooth and nail match between Britt Baker and Big Swole. This match was months in the making, and it turned out to be a cinematic match. It was on the buy-in until the fans got in an uproar and they moved it to the main show. Well, this is what you got. Swole rolls up in a car outside of Britt's office, and she walks in, and Reba is at the reception desk under a disguise. But it didn't work. Swole saw right through it and smacks her upside the head with a clipboard. Later, as Swole is checking out Britt's office, she was seen in the background in a nice shot. She was in the shadows, kind of in the dark and in the light. And she creeps up behind Swole, grabs her diploma off the wall, and breaks it over Big Swole's head. The glass shatters. That was a nice little scene. Britt then tells the referee to ring the bell, and it rings the bell, and we're off to the races. Some would say, where did the bell come from here? Because we're in an office. Well, open up your imaginations. The match was all right for a cinematic, but I can see why some people would be up in arms over it, because some just didn't think it was that great. They would rather see in-ring action. Fast forward to the end, Swole wins the match due to putting a laughing gas mask on Britt, and she got knocked out. And there you have it. Swole wins the match, which surprised me because I thought Britt would get the win since she's been away for quite a while, since May. They'll have another match in the future. I don't see them going past this because AEW rarely continues feuds past pay-per-views. Pay-per-views are usually a reset. So I'll see what happens there. The Bucks versus the Jurassic Express. This was a good match. Jungle Boy and Matt started the match as both get the better of one another. Jungle Boy wanted to shake Matt's hand, but Matt smacked it away. Luchasaurus then gets a tag, and he takes Matt out, and Jungle Boy kicks Nick off the apron. Luchasaurus then flapjacks Matt and kicks him, and Jungle Boy gets the tag as they get a double team tail whip flatline offense in for a 2 count. Nick later gets the tag, and both stop Luchasaurus in his tracks. Both hit a bulldog dropkick combo on Luchasaurus for a 1 count. Jungle Boy later hurricanrana's Nick out of the ring to the outside. Matt gets his Northern Lights off, his patented Northern Lights move off on Jungle Boy. They both get hung up on the ropes. Jungle Boy gets hung up on the ropes a bit. Matt attempted to suplex him over the ropes to the outside, but it didn't work. But he still managed to get outside the ring. But Matt gets him outside and suplexes him over the rails. Jungle Boy gets isolated for a while, and later the Young Bucks kicks Luchasaurus off the apron just as Jungle Boy is about to get his hot tag. Marco then trips Nick off of the apron in defense of his team. Jungle Boy finally gets the hot tag to Luchasaurus as he gets some offense on the Bucks, but they cut him down a bit as he sits right back up. He hits his patented offense and gets a 2 count for his efforts. Jungle Boy goes for the Rana, but Nick powerbombs him on the apron, and Nick hits a Canadian Destroyer on Luchasaurus after the fact, which was a nice sequence. They got a holy shite from the crowd. Little that you heard of him in the background. Marco then gets his crutch kicked away and super kicked for his troubles on the outside by Matt, I believe. Heelish tendencies, I like it. Heel Bucks are best for the business. Marco had it coming, in my opinion. Nick Jackson hits a senton on Jungle Boy while Matt held him up and got a 2 count. The Bucks go for the BTE trigger, and Jungle Boy dodges it, and the Bucks go for a Meltzer driver, but Jurassic Express gets out of it and hits their extinction event and gets a 2 count, which was broken at 2. It could have been a 3 count. Jungle Boy kicks out of a kick that took his head off, but the Bucks hit Jungle Boy with a super kick party, and he kicks out again. After that, the Bucks finally get the win with another BTE trigger. And I thought it was a great match. And it showed Jungle Boy's commitment to... It really put over Jungle Boy there. Even though the Bucks won, the Jurassic Express wins in the end, because they got over more with the crowd. It was good stuff. And we're probably going to see more of the heelish Bucks, I hope, going forward. Next was the Casino Battle Royale, which got a lot of a cluster and featured the first blunder of the night. Trent of the Best Friends first entered, then Daniels, then Blade and Hager, and Phoenix. The heels began by destroying the faces. Later, Trent hits his patented Tornado DDT on Phoenix. Then later, the next 5 enter, which was Kazarian, Will Hobbs, surprisingly, Santana and Ortiz, and Chuck Taylor of the Best Friends. Ortiz and Santana went straight for the best friends in this environment. Their personal vendetta is getting in the way of them. Hobbs eliminated Blade and gets close to taking out Phoenix. The next 5 later enter, which is Billy Gunn. And just as he enters, he fame-asses Hager. Then you had Pentagon, Starks, and Cage. Cage eliminates Gunn. Darby comes out and gets Cage with a board. And Darby eliminates Phoenix. The best friends get their hug in, but Chuck gets eliminated soon after. The next 5 enter, which was Spears, who surveyed the ring but walks over to the commentary booth and grabs a headset. And he greeted the group at the desk. Then you had Eddie Kingston, The Butcher, Sonny Kiss, and Lance Archer. Sonny eliminates Hager. Cage gets rid of Kiss. And Hager then gets a cheap shot in on Kiss on the outside for eliminating him. He got some of his heat back. Trent eliminates Santana. Then Archer eliminates Trent, and Archer punches Ortiz off the ramp. And the Joker happened to be Matt Sydal, who was last seen at the Indie Wrestling Expo a few weeks ago, which he did a good job in. But just as after he attacks Spears on the entrance ramp, he goes to the top rope and attempts a shooting star press, but he slips off the ropes. And many felt bad for him here because you can't get that debut back. But that was unfortunate, and it probably had something to do with the humidity in that arena because it was hot out there. And the amount of sweat on that post probably did him in. But he'll bounce back from this. Interested to see what they do with him, though, if he's signed. Pentagon later gets eliminated. Starks pulls a body bag from under the ring, and Cage pours some thumbtacks out onto the bag. He then stuffs Darby in the bag and then tosses him out, Darby, while he's in the bag with the thumbtacks on the ramp, and he gets eliminated in the process and is seen motionless after he gets let out of the bag. Sydal almost eliminates Spears, but Spears brings him out on the apron and instead stomps Spears out of the match. Hobbs then spinebusts the crap out of Sydal. Then Archer stares him down in the middle of the ring and they go at it. They've been teasing the Archer and Cage match for a while now. It's going to happen sooner or later. Hobbs then drags Cage on the apron and then Archer kicks both of them off of it. The final 4 is Lance Archer, Matt Sydal, The Butcher, and Kingston at this point. Sydal eliminates The Butcher. Then Sydal gets the blackout for his troubles from Lance Archer and gets put on the apron, and then he gets eliminated. Kingston and Lance Archer are the last 2. Eddie then bites Archer and choke tosses Eddie onto the pile of guys outside the ring, and Archer wins the match and he gets a shot at the world title in the future. It would either be Mox or MJF. We'll find out later who that would be. Next matches were this match sucked the air out of the room due to a close call of an injury. It was Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara in the Broken Rules match. They seem to be snake bitten, these two. Hardy shows face out near the football field, looking for Sammy. Guevara returns the favor with a golf cart. He happened to ride up on the scene in a golf cart and chases Matt Hardy down this time. But it didn't work because Guevara ran into some boxes or something. He missed Hardy. Hardy then later hits a DDT on Sammy on the top of a steel table. And after this is where the spot happened where the two were climbing some device and they dove off of it, and Hardy missed a table or something and kind of hit the back of his head on the concrete a bit, and it was thought that he may have suffered a concussion at this point. And this is where things went downhill. Later, Guevara says, "Count him out. Count him, Aubrey." and she gets to count. She attempts to count, but the match is stopped by Samson, the doctor, due to a possible injury to Matt. So we thought. But as both made their way back to the arena, the match suddenly continued, because the stipulation was that if Matt loses, he has to leave AEW. Well, they could have easily circumvented that and said he just couldn't continue the match, so they could have had it at a later date when he was a little better. But the match continued. Sammy and Matt climbed the scaffold, and Matt punches Guevara off of the scaffold, and then Aubrey counts to 10, therefore counting Sammy out of the match, and Matt wins it. And there you have it. A lot of people are down AEW's throat due to this, because the match should have been stopped, which it was, but it wasn't. It started back up. So this will be AEW's first PR blunder, and hopefully they can come back from it. It was so silly in hindsight to keep it going. They could have easily did this match elsewhere, but I guess they wanted to get a finish because of the stipulation. But this is where the show turned around. We had Thunder Rosa versus Shida, Hikaru Shida, for the AEW World Women's title. This was probably the match of the night, in my opinion. Both ladies got fired up to start their match with strikes back and forth. Rosa goes for the ankle lock, but Shida gets to the ropes. Shida gets a Rana off on Rosa, and both hit a drop kick as they get the better of one another. Rosa later hits a neck breaker for a 2 count. Shida gets a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker off on Rosa and rolls her out, and she rolls outside. Shida then gets her patented apron knee strike off on Rosa. Rosa then uses Shida's own chair as a launching pad for herself and gets Shida with her knee. Shida later gets a sleeper hold on Rosa and hooks the legs, and Shida's shoulders were down and got a 2 count. Rosa then gets a hanging pendulum on Shida and steps to the corner and hits Shida on the head a few times with the turnbuckle pad. She used her pendulum move to bounce Shida into the turnbuckle a few times. Shida then tries to muscle Rosa up for her stretch muffler submission, but Rosa head scissors her way out of it. Rosa later hits a DVD, a Death Valley driver, on the apron to Shida. She rolls her into the ring for a 2 count. Shida then hits a Meteora on Rosa while on the entrance ramp. Shida hits the Falcon Arrow, and Rosa kicks out at 1. Shida then gets the stretch muffler on Rosa, and Rosa fights her way to the ropes. Shida eventually gets the win with a running knee, and it was a no-doubter. Great match from both. I would have liked for Rosa to win, but she couldn't have, since she signed to another company, unless there was a real deal in place, which there isn't. But it was a good match. The best match of the night, in my opinion. After that, we had a Kip Sabian segment. Kip says both are getting married, and we're going to have a wedding in the future on Dynamite. Oh boy, I can hear the collective groans right there. He has a best man in store, but who could it be? We shall find out on Dynamite. And then, you know who I think it could be? I think it could be Miro of Rusev fame. He certainly knows about a wedding. He knows about weddings, TV weddings to be exact. Should be interesting. Only for that fact. If we get Miro, it'll be worth it. Anyone else? I don't know. They're going to keep us on our toes, and people are going to watch to find out. Shall see what happens on Dynamite. Next match we have the Dark Order versus the Natural Nightmares, Scorpio Sky, and Matt Cardona. Everyone charges in on one another to start this match. Dustin and Brody goes at it in the middle of the ring for a bit. The Natural Nightmares get a double team on Uno as he gets isolated in their corner. Sky later gets the tag and Russian leg sweeps Uno, and Cardona gets the tag and hits a neck breaker and tags out to QT. Uno then leads QT to his corner and he proceeds to get pummeled. Colt then tags in and gets aggressive on QT, and he feels it. He feels how good it is to just lay it in on an opponent in that moment. Brody then gets the tag and lays waste to QT with a back body drop, and it was he got a lot of air with that back body drop. Cardona later gets a hot tag and gets a missile drop kick off on Colt and gets a pin on him for the 2 count. Brody later hands Cardona on a platter for Colt to pin, and he got a 2 count. Later, Jay goes for a slap to Scorpio Sky again, but Scorpio was not going to be fooled this time. He stopped Jay from doing it, and out of nowhere, Brandy hits a pump kick on Jay and takes her out of the ring. This will further the Anna Jay Brandy Rose feud. Sky then hits the TKO for a 2 count due to a broken pin. Cardona hits his radio silence on both Dark Order members, Stu Grayson and Evil Uno. Brody and Dustin later tee off, and Brody gets his discus lariat on Dustin and tags Colt in to pin Dustin, but Colt didn't go for the pin. He instead went for a moonsault, and this cost the Dark Order the match. Dustin rolled up QT for the win. Brody then throws a tantrum after the match and pushes down Cabana. And he says, "He gave it to you. I gave it to you." Post-match, Dustin has an interview with Tony Schiavone. He says, "It's been 5 decades, 32 years. It's been 32 years. We left the Dark Order in the dust. We did it for you, Cody. Someday you're going to be back and you're going to take what's yours. Hard work pays off. This train is rolling." Dustin gets a match for the TNT title, and it will be on Dynamite. And I already know how that's going to go. I don't think he's going to win, but it should be a good match. FTR, the next match, and possibly one of my honorable mentions for best matches of the night. We had FTR versus Omega and Page for the World Tag Team titles. Cash and Omega starts the match off. Page wants in, and Omega tags him in as long as his head was right. Cash then offers his hand to Page, but Page doesn't accept and instead beats him down. Omega then stomps him. Both later chop Cash one after another, and once again for good measure at the same time. Later, Page goes for a standing shooting star and gets a 2 count. FTR later wraps Page around the ring post and held him there for a good leverage. Later, they hit a tandem gut buster on Page for a 2 count. Omega gets fired up at this point and hits his Terminator Tope to FTR on the outside of the ring. FTR hit a tandem double team for a close 3 count later in the match. Omega and Page get ready for the last call, but the FTR halts it. Dax goes for a superplex but gets knocked off the rope but hits it anyway, and Cash delivers a splash on the other rope, top rope, after for a 2 count. Dax later hits a brain buster on Omega, and Omega hits a reverse Rana and hits Cash with a Tiger Driver 98 and gets a 2 count. Omega then hits his V-trigger and goes for the one-winged angel, and FTR escapes and gets a dragon screw off on Omega, further going after his leg. Dax later hits a reverse figure 4 on Omega, and Dax uses the ropes for leverage behind the ref's back, and Omega reaches the ropes eventually. Later, Omega goes outside the ring for a break, and Page comforts him, and FTR corners Omega and continues to work on Omega's knee. Omega then hits a desperation snapdragon on Dax and yet another on Cash. Omega then makes the hot tag to Page, and he goes wild on FTR. Actually, Page fall away slams Cash kips up and cross bodies Dax on the outside of the ring. Page then climbs the top rope and goes for a moonsault, but instead hits a senton from the top onto FTR after they moved out of the way of the moonsault. FTR later hits double diving headbutts to Page for a 2 count. FTR then hits a mind breaker on Page and gets a 2 count as Tully celebrated too early. But FTR defeats both Page and Omega via another mind breaker to Page after the first. And there you have it. You have new tag team champions in FTR. I knew this was going to happen, and it should have happened. Page and Omega needs to go back to the singles stuff, and they will now. Haven't seen much development for the Horsemen, though. It's been a while now. Maybe they put a halt on it, because I didn't see any teasers in this match. Or there could have been, but I didn't notice. Post-match, FTR sit a beer next to Page as they leave the ring. Omega has hold of a weapon and removes the cloth. Stands there for a bit as Page gets to his feet, but he tosses it to the mat. And Page went over to hug Omega, but he lets Page fall to the ground as he went to embrace. Omega then walks out on Page as the camera follows him backstage, and he says, "I'm done," to the Bucks. He said it's time for a clean break. He got into the truck, asked were they with him. The Bucks didn't get in, but Omega closes the door and the truck drives away. We're possibly going to be getting the cleaner Omega in AEW, folks, and I am here for it. It should be a good time in the next coming months heading into Full Gear. Next, Jericho cuts a promo on Orange Cassidy backstage. Jericho said he makes main event stars. He makes dreams come true, and he also ends them. He's going to hit Orange Cassidy with the Judas effect, going to make him tap, and he's going to throw his lazy self into the vat of orange juice and champagne. And after that, we have the match, the Mimosa match. Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho in a Mimosa Mayhem match. There were vats on each side of the ring. The crowd came to life during Jericho's entrance. Jericho hits an immediate code breaker on Orange Cassidy for a 2 count to start the match. He then gets Orange Cassidy in the corner and chops him twice. Jericho goes for the walls, but flips Orange Cassidy over the ropes instead, and Orange Cassidy almost falls into the vat of OJ and champagne. Jericho then throws a table at Orange Cassidy as they're both on the ring apron, and grabs a plate and cracks it over Orange Cassidy's head. Later, both trade strikes near a vat of mimosa. Jericho continues to dominate Orange Cassidy at this point. Instead of powerbombing Orange Cassidy onto the vat, he chooses to put him through a table. Jericho grabs Floyd the Bat, but gets a super kick from Orange Cassidy instead. Orange Cassidy then hits a Michinoku driver on Jericho for a 2 count. After he hits a stun dog millionaire, then goes for a swinging DDT, but Jericho counters into a walls of Jericho, and Orange Cassidy attempts to escape it. As he's near a vat, Orange Cassidy grabs a glass and dips it into the mimosa, and later throws it into Jericho's eyes. Orange Cassidy then hits his orange punch, and Jericho is then tossed over the ropes, but only his leg lands into the mimosa. Your whole body has to go into it. Orange Cassidy gets some life as he hits a running PK and gets his DDT for a 2 count. Orange Cassidy goes to the top and attempts to get his DDT off, his top rope DDT off, but Chris Jericho counters it into a code breaker for a 2 count. Orange Cassidy hits his orange punch twice on Jericho as he is out on the apron, and he tumbles into the vat for the win. Orange Cassidy gets the second win over Jericho in the rubber match. And this puts Orange Cassidy on top. He wins the feud, and Chris Jericho puts over yet another star in the process. I enjoyed the match. It had storytelling, and it had some nice in-ring work, and it was good. Then we had the main event, my second favorite of the night. Jon Moxley versus MJF for the AEW World Championship. During Moxley's entrance, some dude attempted to hug him or get near him, but security was on top of it, grabbed the dude, tackled him. Mox walked over to the spot to see what was going on, but after continued with his entrance. Let's see, both started the match with slight mat wrestling. MJF later gets a headlock takedown on Mox, and the fans booed MJF. MJF says, "You're getting some wrestling tonight. You're not getting brawling." MJF refused to get outside the ring, but MJF quickly gets inside of it and refuses to play by Mox's game. Mox later gets a tope off on MJF as he finally gets him to stay on the outside of the ring long enough. Mox then attempts to split MJF's fingers on the outside of the ring, and MJF screams for the ref. Ref! But the ref says, you gotta win. You gotta be a victory. You gotta be a victor. The match is not gonna end on something like that. MJF goes for a crossroads, but Mox reverses it with a sleeper hold. Mox then hangs MJF out to dry on the ropes with a suplex to the ropes. Later, MJF shoulder blocks Mox off the ring apron, and Mox attempts to pop his shoulder back into place after this. Suddenly, MJF starts bleeding, and Mox smells the blood, and he hits an X-plex on MJF for a 2 count. Mox is down an arm at this point, so he had to figure out what he could do as he attempts to get his arm or his shoulder back in place. Storytelling. Mox goes for the Gotch pile driver, but couldn't do it due to his shoulder acting up, because he would need 2 arms to do this. Mox then hits a boss man slam on the outside of the ring, and later hits the Gotch pile driver and gets a 2 count. So I'm guessing his arm felt a little better at this point. MJF then bites Mox's hand and gets a stomp off on it. And as Mox was mouthing off to MJF spits in his face, and Mox goes for the paradigm shift, but he couldn't do it because that move was banned per the stipulation of the match. MJF then gets his salt of the earth off on Mox, but Mox attempts to get out of it. MJF brings him back to the center of the ring, but Mox still gets to the ropes with his foot. MJF later hits his heat seeker on Mox and gets a 2 count for that. And he went for the heat seeker again and hits an air raid, but Mox hits an air raid crash on MJF for a close 3 count. MJF then gets desperate at this point and goes for a bridge pin and gets a 2 count. Mox puts the sleeper to MJF, but MJF pulls the ref close to him and low blows Mox, and then goes for a roll up for a 2 count. MJF hits Mox with a crossroads, but he only gets a 2 count for this. Wardlow later gets involved by throwing the diamond ring to MJF, but the referee's back was turned, dealing with Wardlow as MJF was fumbling to get the ring. He got it, looked up with his bloody face, and allowed Mox to hit his banned move, the paradigm shift, on MJF behind the ref's back for the win. He retained his title. And as a result, MJF is no longer undefeated in singles competition. And he has no one to blame but himself for this, because he tried to cheat. But this allowed Moss to cheat as well with his banned move. And Wardlow may have aided in the breakup of these two, since later on social media, MJF posted a statement saying freaking Wardlow. This is gonna get people talking, because they have been dropping a lot of teases of the two splitting over the past month or so. Just gonna add more flame to the fire. That was it. There you have it. That was the last match of All Out. And I thought it picked up in the second half. First half was a little shaky due to all the botches and the blunders. Overall, the second half saved it, and I thought it was solid. It wasn't bad. It was far from bad. It was either middle of the road to some people, or it was solid. And I thought it was solid due to that second half. So there you have it. And there was the AEW All Out pay-per-view review for September 5th, 2020. And hopefully they learned their lesson from this, and we'll see what happens on Wednesday's edition of Dynamite. So catch you then.